Hello mate, welcome back to the channel. So today we are going to be taking a look at the Chieftain, but before we jump into the redesign, the Ascendancy design that we've come up with, I just wanted to give an overview of where the project is. It's got an official name now, I'm calling it Project 36, and with the news that's come out of PAX and Gamescom, and even just like some stuff that's come out around 325, I feel like now we know the date, November 15th, for when PoE2 Early Access launches. I've got a very clear idea in my head of when we're going to get this done by. So I've set it in my mind. I'm determined that we're going to do 36 Ascendancy class designs, every one, 3 for each class, 12 base classes. As you can see here, I've laid them all out. So before today, we've done 8. This is going to be our 9th one up in the Chieftain on the left here. And then actually I can just switch over just so you can see. There you go. You can see the mercenary classes there as well. So we've got a hell of a lot to get through, but I am feeling determined, like I said, and today we are actually going to be looking at the first time in the series where we've brought a class back from PoE1. So not only are we looking at Marauder, which is an original class, base class, but we're actually bringing back an Ascendancy class and redesigning that. So without further ado, let's get into the design. As you can see, we're changing up the way we're presenting the class a little bit from earlier in the series. I think it's a bit of an upgrade, so you can see a bit more of the artwork that you just saw a second ago. But then also in the top left, we've got some of the fluff text. It's kind of a description of the class and what you'd be expecting. Maybe if you saw this on the start screen, something like that. And then down in the bottom left, we have got the themes, and these are kind of like the overarching ideas that I had when I was coming up for the actual like designs of the nodes and stuff like that. So let's start by reading out the flavor, okay? So there is no greater honor than for a Karui to lead their tribe. Only those who've demonstrated strength of mind, heart, and body can be considered, though ultimately it is the gods who will choose to grant their favor or not. The Chieftain offers incredible resilience, flexibility, and the ability to empower allies and diminish his foes. Choose your tribal allegiance, then prove your god and your people right to bestow their trust in you. And then coming down to the left, you can see the main themes are allies, resistance, tribe, and flexibility. All right, so before we jump in, all that I'll say is that I've tried to keep some of the core character of the Chieftain from PoE1. I really like some of the nodes, and you'll see a couple of nods to the nodes here and there. And yeah, just it's one of my favorite Ascendancy classes actually in PoE1, so I'm a little bit biased on this one. So I'm really happy with how the designs come out. And the first thing that is really unique about this design, and I haven't done anything like this in another design, is that you have to take the same first node. However, that first node offers you many options. So I'll show you what I mean. So you take this first travel node here, you get increased tribal damage, I'll explain what that is in a second, and tribal resistance. And then we come to tribe leader. So you select one tribe. As soon as you take this node, there's 3 tribes on each side, and you basically get an option to select one of these. If you've seen my Brigand video, I did something similar there with like the gang member that you could choose. And the only other thing on this node is all fire damage nodes on the passive tree are converted to your tribal damage type. So if we take a look at the first tribe here, you've got the Namahu, and you've got tribal damage and tribal resistance. So every one of these tribes has a tribal damage and tribal resistance type. And basically, depending on the tribe you pick, you get a different type of damage, and that will then affect the other nodes on not only the passive tree, but also on the rest of the Ascendancy tree. So you get given your tribal damage and resistance type by picking your tribe, and then you also get extra buffs. And these are kind of inspired by the Pantheon buffs that we'll probably be losing in PoE2. On the right-hand side, we've got 3 elements, and on the left, we've got physical. So if we go through Namahu, 50% chance to ignite, you take 50% less fire damage over time. So RF builds looking at you potentially. Obviously, RF is a contentious topic right now. And you cannot be frozen or made brittle. Next, we've got the Orohongoi. I'm probably butchering these pronunciations, so anyone from New Zealand, just give me a nod. Let me know in the comments below. But yeah, so this is cold damage and cold resistance. You get 50% chance to freeze, and then you gain 10% of life regained as mana. Any life that you're regaining, whether that's through flasks, whether that's through leech, whether that's through any way that you're regaining life, you're getting 10% of that as mana, and you cannot be ignited. Next up, we've got Valako. Valako is our lightning tribe, so we've got lightning damage and resistance, 50% chance to shock. When an enemy crits you, they are permanently shocked for 10%. This effect can stack up to your maximum shock. So this is quite a unique, I don't think I've seen anything like this in PoE so far, but you're basically permanently adding shock if an enemy's critting you. So it's kind of a defensive, offensive, but defensive node. And then furthering this, you and your allies take 40% less extra damage from critical strikes. Alright, so moving over to the left, we've got our 3 physical tribes. First up is the Ronga Kurai. So physical damage, lightning resistance, 25% chance for enemies' stun duration to be doubled, 50% increased stun resistance, and then shocks on you are 75% less effective. Next up, the Torhoa. We've got physical damage, cold resistance, bleed, steal no extra damage whilst you're moving. You cannot have more than 3 stacks of poison on you. You get 10% increased movement speed, and you and your allies have onslaught whilst you're on low life. So this is a bit more of a kind of dexterity, speed focused tribe. And finally, Tukahama. Man cannot cheat the gods without consequence. The little flavor text was quite fun on some of these. Looking through the Tota Trial of the Ancestors League stuff and trying to pull bits out of there, quotes from the different tribal leaders. Anyway, tribal damage is physical, tribal resistance is fire. Leech 1% of tribal damage and 12% to all resistances. Also, you are immune to all forms of slow. So this, I've worded this quite specifically where this isn't including stun or freeze. This is specifically things like chill, hinder, maim, all that kind of stuff. You can't be affected by it. So this is just, as you can see, I've kind of tried to offer lots of different utility across these. On the elements, you've got like chance to ignite, chance to freeze, chance to shock, and then lots of different defensive utilities. And the same as these, you've got stun, you've got sort of more speed, and then you've got a bit more of a generalist option here if none of those were really appealing. So you pick your tribe. Let's just say, for example, we're going to go with the Orohangui tribe. And then we now have loads and loads of options that open up to us. So we've got 4 single sort of track, single tier nodes that you can pick up. And then we've got a 2-tier nodes down here. So we'll start off on the left. The whole point around this is coming off of your tribal resistance that you're taking. So for us, this will be +1 maximum cold and then 20% cold res. This duo node, these are the resistance nodes from PoE1's Chieftain. So as you can see, tribal protection, I've renamed them, but all of your tribal resistance is 50% of that is added to your other resistances or elemental resistances. And then we've got the max resistance, so your tribal max resistance is all the others are equal to that. So say we had 79 cold, max cold resistance, then all of our other elemental resistances would be equal, but only the maximum. And so this, I felt like the thing with the Chieftain in PoE1 is that you kind of, if you pick up one of these, it feels like you kind of have to take the other. But then it feels like, because it's a 2-node investment, you've kind of lost half of your ascendancy just to taking some defensive options. And I wanted to basically like reduce the defensive element of this and make room for some other stuff to do with allies and that you'll see in a minute. And so now I've basically crushed that down and said, okay, you can pick one of these and you can specialize into one of them. We'll tick those off just to show the artwork on them and stuff like that. Not that it's a huge deal. So coming down to the bottom left, we've got increased tribal damage and tribal resistance. Again, a lot of these are just these travel nodes are very similar because it's so flexible, the damage type and the resistance type that you're choosing for yourself. Hinekora's Fateweaver. Okay, so this is a doubling down of this tribe picking option, but I wanted to have an extra cost, and that is the ability to make your tribal damage type become chaos damage. And then nearby enemies have -20 chaos resistance. So you're still going to get the benefits of 50% chance to freeze, you gain 10% of life, regained as mana, etc, etc. But now it's just converting your tribal damage type over to chaos damage. So all of the effects which will affect your tribal damage type, all of the increases to it, are now going to chaos damage. So we know chaos damage is very powerful. Monsters typically aren't very resistant to it. So this is like a very specialized doubling down into chaos damage. Now remember, the tribe leader node converts all fire damage nodes on the passive tree into tribal damage type. So this is also going to affect the passive tree and convert all the fire nodes over to chaos damage, giving you way more chaos damage passive points on the tree to select from as well, which is pretty cool. The nice thing as well is, if you've picked up a load of those points for cold damage, let's say, and then converted it to chaos, you don't have to retake those nodes because they will automatically convert. All right, we'll keep that one there. And now I tell you what, we'll come over to the right and we'll do another design that I've taken from PoE1. And that's one of the most interesting and fun and sometimes build enabling options, which was Hinekora's Death's Fury. So we've just called it Death's Fury because we've already got a Hinekora node over here. And again, we're getting some area of effect this time, but we're getting tribal resistance still. So this is the explode on death option. So 500% of their max life as your tribal damage type, not fire this time, and there's a 5% chance for that to trigger. What we've also done with this one though is, because we're focusing a little bit more on allies and minions with this archetype, we've added it as a duo node, and now instead of there being a 5% chance for them to explode, dealing 500%, we've now got our minions will explode on death, dealing 50% of their life as tribal damage. So this is kind of like minion instability, but again, it's based on your tribal damage type, so it's very flexible to what you're choosing to build around. So that's just a slight change on that theme there, but basically keeping Death's Fury, Hinekora's Death Fury from PoE1 in the Ascendancy tree. All right, let's get into the minion stuff, talking about minions a little bit. So we've got 15% increased minion damage and our tribal resistance, and then Warband. So what does Warband do? You gain the Warband skill. Your maximum warband size is equal to 1 per 10 character levels. So let's say at level 70, you get 7 warriors in your warband. Your warriors deal 50% of their damage as your tribal damage type. And then every second, your warriors have a 1% chance to be blessed by your tribal god. So each of the tribes will have a god that is associated with it. And once blessed, they gain powerful abilities for 8 seconds. So like, what does this mean? First off, let's talk about the Warband skill. So the Warband is a skill that will show up in your skill UI, and it can be socketed just like any other minion skill with minion support gems. There is a spirit cost of 50 because they are permanent minions. The philosophy behind permanent minions in PoE2 is that they have a spirit cost. That spirit cost can be reduced, it could be gotten rid of, it could be doubled. That's kind of a balancing thing. And then the only other thing to say about the warriors that come with the Warband skill, they come in 3 types. Yeah, so you can see here, they come in heavy, light, and ranged. And the composition can be selected in the minion UI. The minion UI panel that we're going to be getting is going to have our options to turn up or down based on our spirit costs and us balancing our spirit. And we get in there, we can select what type of warriors we want. Heavy warriors, you can imagine double-handed weapons, armor. Light warriors, more stabby, and then ranged warriors could come in the form of potentially mages, but also archers ideally. Each of them has different weapon types and blessings based on your chosen tribe. The only other sort of important thing would be like what happens to these warriors when they get blessed by the tribal gods, you know, and that is kind of for the devs to decide. I don't want to go too into the weeds with it, but you can imagine sort of Tukahama like comes down and empowers them and they're getting like Fist of War slams or something, right? Or Kaun comes down for like the Namahu and everyone's getting sort of like a little mini RF aura or something crazy like that, right? A Molten Strike skill added to, you know, or projectiles added. You could do whatever you wanted with that, but I just think it's like a fun idea that every now and then one of them becomes visibly empowered, and it just change up the play style a little bit. Oh, the only other final thing to say would be that they respawn just like kind of skeletons we've seen with the Witch, with this Witch Showcase and skeletons. They respawn after not taking damage for like 4 seconds or something like that. Basically, they just automatically respawn slowly after dying. And then from here, we've got like 2 options to double down on this kind of like ally empowerment sort of meta. The one on the right is probably like my favorite node on the tree, or like my favorite new node, definitely. And that is Ancestral Allegiance. So for each nearby rare or unique enemy, a warrior champion spirit from the halls of the dead will aid you. Now, what does that mean? Okay, so I've just put in the footer section here that these champions have powerful, unique abilities and are considered allies. The first champion will always be from your chosen tribe. Any further champions will be random. So I'm thinking there's like, you know, GGG could design 1 champion for each. You could literally pull them from the halls of the dead, potentially. I can't remember the names of all of the, like, you know, chieftain leaders that were there in the halls of the dead, but you could just pull them from there and rip them from Tota, basically. They have all of the same skills, things like that. But yeah, basically they're just like these really powerful allies that when you're around a rare or a unique, they come and help you. And as soon as that rare or unique dies, they disappear. So basically in every boss fight, you could think of it, you're going to have an ally who's going to be a champion of your tribe, and they will be, you know, there to help you in the battle. I just think that's like thematically so cool that you're like this chieftain and you're honoring the gods, you're honoring your tribe, and then they're sending down like a fallen champion to help you in your time of need. Yeah, I absolutely love that. Like, that would make me pick this Ascendancy alone. Feels cool. We've got Reclimation. So this is a different way of kind of buffing your allies and your warband. So anytime you use a warcry or a banner skill, create tribal ground in the area. So tribal ground has the following properties. It lingers for 5 seconds. So if you're using a warcry, then this is going to last for 5 seconds after you've used it. If you're using a banner skill that might last for 10 seconds, then you've essentially got 15 seconds of this tribal ground buff. Enemies take 15% increased damage of your tribal damage type, and so which is essentially a 15% more multi, and allies take 20% less damage of their tribal damage type. It should be tribal resistance. I need to change that. And then summon 1 warrior spirit every 2 seconds from corpses on tribal ground. So these are temporary minions. They're basically like just reskinned warriors. These are more minions that are temporary minions that are spawned from the corpses that come, you know, from as you go around and when enemies die on your tribal ground. Okay, Reclimation. So that's a cool thing. That's like, you know, chuck down your banner, or whenever you're using a warcry, you've got this chance to generate more minions, but also giving your minions and allies buffs. And then finally, talking of banners, we went a little bit wild on this last one, thinking of different things, and it was actually someone in my stream chat over on Twitch. So we've been designing this stuff over on Twitch. Remember, definitely head over there. I would really appreciate any input. I basically do all the artwork and these designs on stream a lot, and so yeah, it would be great to have your input, and it's great to sort of talk about these as we're coming up with them. And here we are. Gain the Winged Salamander mount skill. The mount has a tribal breath weapon that you can use whilst mounted, so it'll use it itself, but whilst you're mounted you can deliberately trigger it. The breath weapon applies exposure for 8 seconds with 50% increased effect. So this is exposure to your tribal damage type. Banner skills can be placed on the mount, gaining 50% increased duration. So this is a whole other aspect where you can put your banner onto your mount. It will increase its duration, but also mean that the banner will move around with you. And then just a nice little buff, whilst mounted, you and your allies get a 20% move speed, and nearby enemies are intimidated. So this is kind of like a rallying sort of, you know, you're on your mount, you're leading your warband or any allies into battle. The movement speed thing, we know that they don't want to rush the game too much and get crazy amounts of move speed, so maybe that goes down. Yeah, and then I guess like the Winged Salamander, you can kind of see it in the icon design a little bit here, but essentially it's like its front 2 legs are like reptilian, kind of almost Drake-like. I think the head could potentially be slightly more like lizard-like, maybe more like gecko-like, wider. But then its back legs are winged. It can't fly. It doesn't have anything like this. Just a cool like aesthetic. That it's got these like webbed back legs. All right, and that is the Ascendancy tree. So hopefully you can see what I've been trying to do here. Like keep this tribal leader. Really lean into that. You actually get to choose your tribe, offer tons of agency to the player, and then offer tons of flexibility around what kind of damage type you want to be leaning into. You could build this elemental builds, physical, chaos, but also it's just like opening up so much elemental options and even chaos options down on that bottom left side of the tree, as well as new ways to generate minions and have like a unique kind of empowerable, interesting minions that feel thematic to the Chieftain. I mean, I know they teased this design in the 2019 PoE ExileCon. They'd talked about like having a Reaver class, and that there was like that Reaver class was around minions and stuff. And I thought about making something different, but I thought the Chieftain has such cool stuff. The Chieftain actually makes sense that we're getting this kind of leader of your tribe. And so it just makes sense you would have a warband, like a, you know, selected group of tribal warriors that are your like elite warriors that can come round with you. Yeah, I just think it fits really well. We've got 9 options, which kind of fits with the rest of the Ascendancy classes that we're designing, where there's essentially 9 nodes. That includes the duo nodes. So yeah, I had an absolute blast making this. I think this is probably, I say this about every one of them, but this is probably one of the coolest Ascendancies that I think I've come up with. I hope you agree. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think there's things that could be improved. But we're on a bit of a Marauder stint right now. This is obviously the first of 3 that we've done, but what we've got coming up next is going to be we've got the Berserker. I think the Berserker is an incredibly important class to bring back to the Marauder. I think they've said it in interviews, but it's essentially like the archetypical Marauder build that they're sort of like basing it on, with more aggression, axes. And then we've got a really interesting one, which I will wait to leave to the rest of the video, but they're all designed, they're all ready to go. And so I'm going to plan on having them out within a week from this video. So yeah, I've got a lot of Ascendancies to create, as you can see, so the release cadence on these is going to have to be a hell of a lot faster. Hopefully you've been enjoying sort of sharing this journey up till now. We've kind of doubled down on the project, we've improved the way we're presenting it, and I'm hoping that yeah, we can manage to get it done before November. Alright, if you've got any suggestions of classes or anything that you think would be interesting, definitely let me know. We're getting constant changes to the game all of the time, but of course, please subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed it. I'm really trying to build the channel. I've been away for a little bit, like I said, working, and I've basically been working as much as I can to try and make time so that I can take some time off in November and December and play as much of PoE2 as possible, get streaming and sharing updates and stuff like that with you guys. So as you know, we're a bit of an art and design channel. We're going to be looking into some of the lore stuff in PoE2 that comes out. We're going to be doing some art and design stuff around that, and discussing the design of the game, discussing where we think league mechanics could be changed or altered, what the state of the game is. But obviously we're also just going to be enjoying the game, discovering things, making builds, and having a good time. So if you want to sort of join along on the journey with me, I would massively appreciate it. I'd love to see you there. And yeah, for now, friends, exiles, I think that's going to do it. I'll see you in the next one. Ta-da.